Why establish a national freight data hub? We know that freight data is really fragmented. A lot of the cases it doesn't exist, or if it does exist, we can't see it. Or if it also does exist, often we can't compare it. It's not in a comparable form. And we know that the freight sector sort of lags digitisation and technology uptake, both in comparison to other sectors in our economy, but also in comparison, our transport sector when looking at it internationally. So really, really keen to make some improvements in that space. And so the fact that we don't have that data that I've described really means we can't answer a lot of questions about how our freight sector is performing as a whole. We need to know a lot more about what freight is being moved and how it's being moved in Australia, which routes are being used, and what is the extent of consignment delays, and then how our supply chains compare with international competitors. They're just some of our kind of enduring questions for the hub that we're seeking to answer. Where we've come from, we were really sort of happy to receive 5.2 million in the 1920 budget to work on design work. So we worked closely with an industry panel to design the key priorities for the Freight Data Hub, and we had sort of representatives of all modes and some different sectors that really helping us sort of pinpoint what the different issues are that we needed to address. And we sort of, out of that work, agreed there were three purposes for the hub, really helping us do better on the strategic planning side of things. So, in government, when we in Australia have a huge transport infrastructure investment program, thinking about, having good data so that we can do that strategic planning better with our state and territory colleagues. Then there's the kind of operational purpose, and that's really working with industry, and that's what we'd heard a lot from industry about data exchange and improving efficiencies in the system being really important from an industry perspective. And then the third purpose of the hub is around evaluation. So, how can we evaluate how the system as a whole is performing? So we're really trying to make sort of inroads into those three areas. And we describe there being three kind of core functions of the hub. So we're talking about open data. So at the moment, we're focused very much on making government-held data more widely accessible. We've done some really neat visualizations. So I encourage you, if you get a chance, to go and check out the Freight Data Hub prototype website. And that is, around, for example, visualising our rail data, the data we have in the road space, getting more insights into what comes into our ports and where it travels on land in Australia. So doing a lot of projects in that space. Then the second function is really around that data exchange and standards side of things. So again, I see the location registry as fitting into that sort of function of the hub. And then some work around leadership and innovation, so standard setting and so forth. I'm just conscious of time, so I'll whip through this fairly quickly. So where we're going, so we've done the design work, and then in the most recent budget, we were really grateful to receive 16.5 million over the next 4 years to kind of deliver the hub. And we're seeing this as really very much the first step. It's about, as I described, that government node and some early examples of industry exchange and really making that work. So just a quick overview there. I won't run through it all, about our vision for the next 4 years, as I said, around open data, doing things in data exchange and in leadership and innovation. I've run through our purposes. We're really looking at improving our data priorities. So, better data on the vehicle level side, the consignment level side, containers, infrastructure and costs, and then those enduring research questions that I touched on a few of those before. It just starts to run through what we're talking about, which is our 13 key projects of the hub. And as I said, the location registry being one of those. So we're working on a freight data catalogue, evaluating the supply chain strategy better, so getting some good KPI data to monitor how the system's performing. We're doing a lot in the road space with truck telematics, giving us good insights about, where congestion pinch points are happening and, where the rest stops are, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing work, we recently executed a letter of exchange with Australian Border Force, so we've got that really granular import-export data that'll give us some more information about what's coming into port. We're trying to do a lot in the rail data space. There's kind of a bit of a lack of information about what's happening in the rail space, so we're working pretty hard there. And in coastal shipping, and then more regular freight forecasts, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the priority projects, it's on the next slide, is this National Location Registry, and that's the relevant project for today. And that is, we've been working with GS1 and an industry panel to build a national location registry, which is an electronic address book of delivery and pickup locations. It's something we heard from industry that they were really keen to progress, and that work began in 2019. And so, what we were hearing is that location management is a really critical part of the supply chain, and it's interesting getting support to get this through in government. I think the reaction is often being, how can we not already have this in place? So, really having in one place some information about delivery and pickup locations. So give some real examples there about, what size truck can I send? Is the destination open to take deliveries? Where is the truck entry point? So we were hearing through COVID that, different locations were changing their open and shut hours, and that our logistics operators were finding that really hard to keep up with. So the work that's happened today is, as I said, we were hearing it as it being a priority for industry. There was a request from industry to establish a steering committee in 2019, which we did. And then the Department of Infrastructure has supported kind of 3 phases of the hub so far. We conducted a pilot in 2019, which showed that, yes, a registry system would work using the GLNs, etc. Then we provided the seed money to build the registry sort of in late 2020, early 21. And then now we're in that 3rd phase, which is providing operational support for the first 2 years of the registry's operation, and we will launch the registry in December. And it does use that GS1 global data standard, the GLN, and the feedback we've had is that there is really widespread support for adoption of that standard. I talked about the industry steering committee to guide the location registry. We've had widespread involvement of a really great group of companies that are really interested in driving this forward. And at the moment, the step is really about getting their data and others into the system so that it is something that it's worthwhile people using. And then we'll really have to work to get use of the system up, noting that, the logistics sector is a very large sector in terms of numbers of companies. So really at the moment, it's kind of, let's get data in the system to make it a worthwhile system for others to adopt. And that's where we're at. I think just this slide and the next slide sort of sets out what the problem is. And again, it's kind of, when we've described it to people along the journey, people are surprised that, we are still in this manual space. But today, the collection and exchange of business information about physical locations is an analogue process. So it's entirely manual. There's often multiple versions of each location. There's a huge cost and time burden per organisation. There's a risk of errors. There's a lack of data maintenance. There's often out of date or inaccurate information. There's often unknown changes to locations, and there's a high delivery of risk failures. So what we're trying to do through building the registry is to really improve things and make it all digital. So to make it a consistent process, a single version of truth for each location, then it means there's less administration across all those businesses across the economy, less risk of errors, ease of data maintenance means that the information is up to date, there's automatic notification of change, and less risk of delivery and failure. And how we're trying to do that through the location registry is really, as I've talked about, using the GLN, using a standardised communication method, a standardised communication format, which will enable digitisation, and then it will enable consistent capturing and dissemination of accurate location data. Then obviously, as others have touched on, the location identification is the key. So we're using the GLN for the primary location identification type within the location registry. So it'll be one language, one standard, and we know what the GLNs are. So how it'll work, as I've talked about, is we're really trying to get data into the system at the moment. Those location owners and custodians, we're in the process of putting that into the system now. Or collecting that, in a consistent format, getting it into the registry. And then the idea is it would go out to the location data recipients, and they could indeed put that information into their own enterprise systems. the core data that would be in the location registry would be the GLN, the location details, the transport entry points, geofencing, contact details, location type, function, constraints, truck types, council curfews, etc. And then looking to extend that data into hours by day of week, driver facilities, is the booking required, site induction, etc., etc. So yeah, we're really excited about this project, and it's really been very much a partnership, and we know there's a lot of work ahead of us, but that's kind of where things are up to from our perspective.